My name is Emma Mannion, and my project is titled Dickie Chappelle, Communicating the Truths of War and the Realities of Being a Female War Correspondent. During World War II and the Vietnam War, Georgette Louise Meyer, known as Dickie Chappelle, communicated the harsh realities of war, while also communicating the challenges of being a female journalist on the front lines. She paved the way for female reporters, and we are still impacted by her legacy today. Throughout my performance, you will be seeing and hearing evidence of this, and you will also see Dickie herself speaking to you from the great beyond. Am I a ghost? Am I an angel? That's not why I'm here. I'm here because I want to guide you. I was killed by a shrapnel while on patrol with the Marines in Vietnam on November 4th, 1965. And my last moments were captured in a photograph by Henry Hewitt, a French photographer who was with me that day. I was the first American female reporter to be killed in action, but I'm much more than that. It was my number one priority to communicate the truth about the realities of war during World War II and the Vietnam War. I remember the first time one of my photos, titled The Dying Marine, was published. This picture revealed the truth through the blood and filth, but also through the little things, like the note on the man's shirt that says urgent and the toothbrush in his pocket. This photograph was a window into the cruel inhumanity of war. Some reporters may have chosen not to take it, but for me it was important because it communicated the truth about war. I took this picture of Corporal William Fenton at Iwo Jima in 1945. I wrote about him in my memoir, saying that Corporal William Fenton was one of 551 critically wounded Marines brought aboard the USS Samaritan who wanted to live. He did. One thing that I love about this picture is the fact that he has a toothbrush in his pocket. People often fail to realize that in war, even though there's death and fighting, the people fighting are still people. War is measured by battles won or casualties lost. But the people fighting it still have feelings and families, and they brush their teeth just like we do. I put a human face on the horrors of war. While I was reporting on the front lines of the Battle of Okinawa, my photos were turned down because they were deemed too sensitive and dirty for publication. I took the photos to convey the unfiltered realities of war. Over the years, I communicated the challenges of my experience as a female journalist. I gave speeches, wrote articles, and wrote a book. I wanted to share my determination to succeed as a woman and showcase my patriotism. When interviewed by Mike Wallace on his radio show, he challenged me by asking whether jumping out of planes and being on the front lines was, quote, a woman's job. I responded that, quote, there's no question about it. War is not a woman's place. There's only one other species on Earth from whom the war zone is no place, and that's men. But as long as men continue to fight wars, I think observers of both sexes will be sent to see what happens. That's what I told him. I wrote in my memoir that every time I risk my life to follow my passion and communicate the truths of war, I'm ridiculed, shunned, and dismissed as being a woman without the strength or ability to do the job. I often communicated these challenges. I remember when I was arrested and lost my press credentials because I was deemed in the way of the war effort. But in reality, I was being overlooked because I was exposing the truth, and also because I was a woman. You can't arrest me, I told the authorities that day. The story I wrote embarrassed an admiral? That's why you're arresting me? What? My press credentials are being revoked because you say I'm not allowed to be here at all? When my press credentials were reissued, I traveled from unit to unit. As I did, I heard soldiers say, "What the hell are you doing here?" and "Go someplace else." I eventually gained the respect and trust. I wrote about this in my memoir, saying that the sergeant seemed to see me for the first time. Soldiers finally recognized me for my courage and perseverance while communicating their stories. However, these very strengths were the actions that led to my dismissal. I not only communicated the truth through my photographs, but also through my journalism. I remember one of my assignments for Vietnam in National Geographic. In the article I wrote, "For the first time in more than 20 years as a war correspondent, I not only carry a camera, but also a carbine. The men I photographed tell me civilians, when captured, are treated as spies. On night patrol in the vast rice bowl known as the Mekong Delta. In this deadly game of hide and seek, you feel joy at simple survival. Night fighting is sudden, vicious, deadly." This opened people's eyes to the horrors of war, and more specifically, Vietnam night fighting. I shared the truth through both pictures and words. In a PBS documentary, Joseph Galloway, a young buck who worked under my wing in Vietnam, was interviewed. Although I never mentioned him in my memoir, I had a strong influence on him. In the documentary, he said, "I respected Dickie. I listened to her advice. I wept when she died. It really ripped the heart out of me." That was an honor to hear. I worked hard to gain the respect of my colleagues. Furthermore, I was buried with full military honors, and the General of the U.S. Marine Corps, Wallace M. Green Jr., said that, quote, "She was not only a skilled, dedicated newspaper woman, but she was an exemplary patriot whose great love for her country was an inspiration to all who knew her and worked with her. She was one of us, and we will miss her." It was very gratifying to know that after years with these soldiers, I finally earned their respect. My bravery and courage in the face of great danger has inspired many journalists throughout the years. For example, there's Jackie Spinner, a former war correspondent for the Washington Post. In 2004, while reporting from Iraq, 2 Al-Qaeda militants tried to kidnap her. This is what she feared most. Quote, "Will I be beheaded like James Foley and Stephen Sotloff in Syria? I tell you this story because at that scary moment in her life, she wondered about me. I wonder," she wrote, "what Chappelle would have thought about the new dangers of war reporting, the fear of being kidnapped and beheaded." And then Spinner added that, "On behalf of all the women correspondents who followed Chappelle into war, because we simply could not stay away, I'm grateful." I also inspired other journalists, including Rita Ellman, a producer for Matter of Fact with Sold Out O'Brien. In a recent interview, Ellman said that Dickie Chappelle is a role model for me, and in my eyes is a role model for all journalists. In addition, John Garofalo, author of Dickie Chappelle Under Fire, wrote that real fame eluded Dickie during her career, but she left a tangible legacy. She fought against conformity when women were expected to adhere to rigid gender norms. She was willing to work harder, stay longer, and dig deeper to get her stories. And throughout her career, she fought her way into situations that could have gotten her killed. Yeah, it got me killed. But dying is not my legacy. My legacy is in the men and women who have the opportunity to be there, by risking their lives, to witness and share the truth. After fighting to be allowed, accepted, and respected as a frontline female war correspondent, I became the first female war correspondent to die on the front lines. People feel my influence through the female reporters who are out there today. They are empowered by my tenacity, perseverance, and success in helping open the door for female war correspondents to be on the front lines. My legacy extends beyond them to all those who were touched by their own personal stories as female frontline reporters, but also all those enlightened by the truths they share in the reporting. As I once wrote in my memoir, if you call yourself a correspondent, your reason for being is first to see and then, of course, to tell.